This is Aussie Mac Zone. We'll cover everything Apple, including Macs, iPhones, iPads, and more. All this from an Aussie perspective. Sit back, relax, and insert yourself into the zone. The Aussie Mac Zone.
Speaking of small mercies. Oh dear. Yeah.
So, hi everybody, welcome to show 227. And we're lucky enough to have Garth again this week. How are you, sir?
G'day, Michael, Zahn, listeners. How are we all?
G'day, Garth. I'm pretty well, mate. Hi, Michael. How you doing? Hello, listeners.
Yeah, hello everybody. There's Zahn as well, looking after us. So don't forget, this week's sponsors, athwebhosting.com.au and aussietechradio.com. And our Aussie Apple ramblings this week are the Greens fail to win support for bid to block Apple's Melbourne Fed Square store. And hopefully there's a picture up there now. An attempt to block the Andrews government's deal with Apple to build a store in Federation Square has failed in Parliament, clearing the way for the contentious retail development. The Greens sought to disallow planning approval for the new Apple shop, which would require the demolition of the existing Yarra building, currently home to the Koori Heritage Trust. But the party was friendless in the upper house on Wednesday. Its disallowance motion defeated 34-4 as the Labor and Coalition and the Crossbench combined to vote it down. The American tech giant Apple and the Andrews government have been in negotiations to build a shop in Federation Square for about 2 years, but kept the talks secret until a project was confirmed 5 days before Christmas. It will be one of just a handful of Apple flagship stores in the world, a 2-story gold-toned glass pavilion that will replace one of Federation Square's original buildings. They're not that old, those buildings, but...
They aren't that old, but they are home to the Koori Heritage Trust. I hope they're going to relocate them somewhere with easy access and things like that, so that sort of stuff isn't lost.
Probably next door in one of the museum buildings anyway.
Yeah, more than likely.
I'm sure they will have thought.
I know the building isn't heritage itself; it's just the Koori Trust and things like that. But it's a shame that they're moving them. They've been there for a while, so
that's a while.
Yeah,
7 years or something.
Okay. We're not talking 20 years.
No,
30, 40, 50, 100 years or anything like this. We're talking 7 years.
Fed Square's not that old, I don't think.
Sorry?
Okay. Not from that part of the world.
I suppose the Grand Prix has been there for 20 years, so it was after that. But I don't know.
So, gold tone glass, have they got mock-ups of this? Have you guys seen mock-ups of what the building's going to be like?
There's a picture that we've put up online that people can see what it's going to look like. It's very, what would you call it? Japanese, Chinese-esque style looking building.
Just the way that's like that cube with that funny,
the
roof shape.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a good looking building. I like the look of the building. It's a cool design. 2 stories, lots of glass, cool outer, sort of balcony and roof to sort of cover that, and
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I think it'll blend in. It's all part of that trying to make it part of the entertainment sector, like Apple's trying to fit into the community, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So and that's going to be interesting to go and see. Once it's built, one of these flagship stores with all the, the different sections and the groves and the this and the that. It'll be a bit of a must-do when going to that part of the world for sure.
Well, Bondi's still got live trees growing inside it, so that's been around for a few years now. So, Apple launching pilot program allowing repairs of soon-to-be vintage mid-2011 iMac in the United States, reports Mac Rumors. Apple has internally announced it is launching a new pilot program that will permit Apple stores and Apple authorized service providers to continue offering repair service for 21.5 and 27-inch iMac models released in 2011, despite the fact that they will be classified as vintage starting next month. The pilot program will be available in the States only between March 1st and August 31st this year, subject to parts availability, according to the company's internal memo obtained by Mac Rumors. Now, I haven't seen any memo, but maybe because it's just American only, I don't know. Yeah, after the pilot ends, repairs will only be available in California and Turkey as required by law.
What?
Yeah, there's got.
There you go.
Apple and authorized service providers can usually repair an iMac's display, hinge, logic board, graphics card, hard drive or SSD, power supply, and other components, although the exact availability of replacement parts remains to be seen. It's unclear if RAM and storage upgrades will continue to be offered. Apple typically offers repairs and replacement parts for Mac until 5 years after it's no longer manufactured. Mid-2011 iMac models are now approaching this cutoff, as the last education-only configuration was discontinued March 2013. But these machines will now remain eligible for service for an additional 6 months. Apple didn't specify if the pilot will eventually expand to other vintage products or whether it will be available outside the United States. Now, these machines, some of them had problematic video cards, but even that, they would have all been replaced by now, I'd imagine. So maybe they just got an excess of parts. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I'm like, why are they doing this now? And for what reason, for who, and just it's and why for only 6 months? Why are they extending it 6 months?
To see what happens, maybe.
Fair enough. Maybe it's just like maybe we could extend the life of these for an extra 6 months. Maybe make a little bit extra money on parts, that sort of thing. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
No, I don't know. You'd be making more money by not supporting them and having people feel like, I'll just get a new one.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Maybe
it's interesting.
Maybe there's so many in the education environment,
or
something like that we're not aware of.
Yep.
So, now a reminder: this week we are brought to you by athwebhosting.com.au. Affordable and competitive plans, 99.95% uptime, domain registration, free setup, auto setup, instant activation, accepting PayPal, 250 scripts installed with one click. cPanel, the industry standard feature-rich control panel, all from $5.95 per month when paid annually, with a 24/7 ticket support system and friendly help when needed. So, and working like a beauty, going very well, that side of it.
Yes, I just want to say, anybody who's seen the TechHeads ad pop up before the web hosting ad, they didn't really see that. It was clearly a technical glitch.
Just don't point out the mistakes. Come on, let the mistakes go under the radar.
The producer is definitely not responsible for that mistake. That's for sure.
The producer needs some direction.
Look what I have to work with.
I know, right? Yeah.
And I'll just comment about that because it's not about the technical glitch, but there's been a lot of ads lately when you're looking for stuff on the internet for Wix, for example. And if you build your site in Wix, you can't get it out. So you're stuck in Wix forever.
Oh.
Just like to point that out to people. They may appear to be maybe cheaper, or you think they're bigger because they're in America, etc. But once you're in, you can't get it out. So if you spend all this time making a nice website and then decide to host it somewhere else, you've got to pay for a new one. So please be aware of that.
That's crazy. So
please make sure that
take the rights and everything to it?
Yep. Well, you can't get it out. There's no export function in a Wix. So it's not written in standard HTML or anything. So yeah. So yeah, please just think about it. And if you're paying someone to actually create your website, make sure it's not on the Wix platform like some people do as well.
Good point.
So, yeah.
All right.
Apple is leading the race to $1 trillion. CNN Money reports it's looking like at least one, if not more, American tech giants may soon find themselves worth more than $1 trillion. That's a lot of zeros. A dozen, in fact. Apple is in the lead right now thanks to strong demand for new iPhones. The company now has a market value of about $910 billion, and the stock only needs to go up another 10% for Apple to top $1 trillion. But even if Apple gets to the $1 trillion mark first, it may soon have company. Apple's rival Alphabet, aka Google, has a market cap just shy of $800 billion. Amazon and Microsoft are also nipping at the heels. Both the Seattle-based tech titans are worth more than $730 billion. And these two companies seem to have more momentum than Apple and Google, whose stocks are up about 6% this year. So, yeah, a lot of money but they're floating around.
Did you say $1 trillion?
$1 million. Yeah, like you say though, with Amazon, close behind, their value has been increasing a lot quicker, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think expanding more overseas markets for Amazon, that's the way they have to make their money. So I think so.
And they're only just expanding now, so their growth is only just going to get bigger, faster, and maybe become number one itself.
Yeah.
Oh, they will. Yeah.
So because Apple sells virtually, one product, Apple's own, basically nothing else, and Amazon sells everything. So
even Apple products.
That's right.
Products. and other products that are pretending to be Apple products as well. But we won't go there.
Apple shares new tutorial videos on framing photos and composing shots with a telephoto camera. Apple has shared 2 new iPhone photography tutorial videos on its website, focused on composing images using the telephoto camera and experimenting with framing. Each short video walks users through a series of step-by-step instructions on how to use the camera to capture unique shots. In the telephoto camera video, for example, Apple suggests using the telephoto lens to simplify composition by cutting out more of the background and focusing on your subject. Telephoto images are available on the iPhone 10 and larger Plus models, iPhones with dual cameras such as the 7 Plus and the 8 Plus. In the framing video, Apple suggests looking for interesting shapes in an image and then placing your subject near the shape to get a natural frame. Like most of the videos in Apple's ongoing photography series, these tutorials are aimed at people who aren't particularly familiar with photography techniques or the feature set available on the phone. And yes, they are very good. Nice, simple to follow. So I would be watching those as well.
Awesome. So have you been playing with these on your lovely iPhone 10?
I've had a quick go through, yes. Yeah, and it's just the way it explains how, just framing, for example, and how to look for things is good.
I know that your lovely wife Karen has played with them because I've been sent some photos of our boys in the framing, and so it looks like fun and cool stuff.
Yes. Now, smartphone security comparison gives Apple top billing, which we'd expect. Only 2 Android brands do okay. 9 to 5 Mac reports an analysis of security updates for different smartphone brands unsurprisingly gives Apple top billing, with just one criticism. And when it came to Android brands, however, only 2 managed halfway decent ratings, with many big brands rating poorly. Security Lab tweeted a table which examined 4 different factors: the shortest time to publish a security update, the maximum delay in making an update available to all, whether or not updates were independent of carriers, and how long a device supported with security updates. And then they broke them down even further to the shortest time and first device and other devices from the same manufacturer. Apple was rated green in all categories. In its shortest time to issue an update was measured in days. They are available worldwide within 1 day. Updates are independent of carriers, and Apple supports devices for 5 years, with the sole exception of the 5C, which was supported for 4 years. The Essential Phone and Google were the only 2 Android brands to score reasonably highly. They both were dinged for relying on carriers for some security updates, meaning that it should take days and it can end up taking months or never happens. Both brands also issue security updates for only 3 years rather than 5. Now, our friends, the market leader, Samsung, was a long way down the rankings. The fastest security updates are measured in weeks rather than days.
Jeez.
Devices can take months, and some updates are only issued quarterly. Samsung only issues support for 2.5 years, down to as little as 1 year for some phones.
That's absolutely pathetic. It really is.
Yes.
It's just ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even thought that was legal in Australia. But anyway, because I'm sure you've got to have 2 years in Australia for when you're buying a phone to have it supported. But if the manufacturer just doesn't issue any security updates, they're still supporting the phone, but they just don't actually create one of the
crap. That's all.
Yes, a shocker.
Yeah.
I've probably brought this up before, but it's Apple's phones. If you have a single crack on your display, or 2 cracks if it actually goes through the home button on those old models that have home buttons, but you don't have an impact. You don't have an impact zone. It's important you don't have the impact zone. That's covered under warranty.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Yeah.
And if you have a single crack on a Samsung phone without an impact, it's still not covered under warranty. So just something to think about.
And this is why we're Aussie Mac Zone and not Aussie, Samsung Zone.
Aussie Android Zone.
Android Zone, that's exactly right.
Now, a reminder that technical glitch should come back about now. This week we are brought to you by Aussie Tech Radio at Aussie Tech Radio.
There we go, look at that.
.com. No.au, just .com. Here we go. We've got an audio glitch as well. We have our friends at the Aussie Tech Security Podcast and the award-winning Aussie Tech Heads Podcast, and our new show, which is Aussie Tech Crypto, which is our newbie crypto with an Aussie perspective. And we've got other podcasts from Australia. Now, story 6, Australian decryption legislation. Now, this is a probably important one for us to discuss. Yes. Australian decryption legislation will not undermine legitimate encryption, says our Home Affairs Office. Calling government proposals to seek decryption of communications a backdoor is a cartoon-like assumption, according to the Secretary of the Department of Home Affairs, Michael Pezzullo. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. Australia's push for a decryption magic bullet will not undermine legitimate encryption and may not need legislation at all, according to Department Secretary Michael Pezzullo. Pezzullo told Senate estimates on Monday morning last week that the preference remains dialogue and consultation with industry, and if newly Minister for Affairs Peter Dutton deemed it was necessary, then legislation would be introduced. Although pushed for specifics by Australian Greens Senator Jordan Steele-John, Pezzullo said the legislation would not undermine legitimate encryption and would balance societal needs for encryption. The challenge for governments and parliaments all around the world is how do we ensure that encryption is used for legitimate societal purposes and not misused in the same way by the internet is misused through the dark web? That encryption is available to those who use it for legitimate purposes and not otherwise. The Secretary for Home Affairs struck out a descriptions of the description proposal as a backdoor. That's the shorthand, colloquial, and in many respects highly ill-informed shorthand that is sometimes used in this field, Pizzullo said. You assume that a backdoor has to be created. I'm just saying that this is a cartoon-like assumption. Not that you are making, but you've seen the literature. Now, my little two bobs worth here.
Yep.
Seeing the leaks that happen from all governments around the world, it is impossible for a decryption method to be kept secret, in my opinion. Even non-governments, but yeah. Can someone possibly advise me how a decryption method can exist that's only the goodies have?
No. Never. It never has. Like we've tried for hundreds of years, like literally like 100 years. Like we've decrypted messages through Morse code, through code words in World War II. Same thing like in radio messages, with Vietnam and Korea and all this sort of stuff. And it doesn't work. So I don't know what makes them think that just because now we've got the internet, the mainstream people and government now have internet, that we can give encryptions and they're going to work now. No, they won't. Nope. They won't. It gives people an excuse to try to crack them. The word in itself makes people want to find out what they are.
Yeah. Okay. So that's sort of almost.
So I'm a little bit paranoid.
I'm not sure what you're saying there, actually, because what you're saying is the encryption in itself is doomed. So we don't even need a decryption method?
Why do you use one?
I mean, it's a genuine... I think societally it is a genuine desire and, comes from a place of wanting to...
be better than everybody else. Sorry.
No.
I've been a smart ass. I apologise.
You know what I mean? I mean, as law enforcement, you want to be able to
hide the truth.
Yeah, just. But I thought you said the encryption never worked.
It never does.
So what you're saying
that's
is
why we know. That's why we know they hide the truth.
So then, there's no problem with law enforcement trying to find ways of enforcing decryptability.
Yeah.
Because the encryption's not going to work anyway.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Pretty much.
All I'm saying is you can understand why law enforcement would like to be
Absolutely.
able to, not allow transfer of information that was used for criminal purposes, or to be able to intercept that.
Yep.
The idea that there's, and I think he's probably right to a degree in that we think of that in terms of how can you have a backdoor that no one else can get into. But that may in fact actually be a simplistic way of thinking about the problem. Just because a problem is hard doesn't mean it shouldn't be tackled.
But they already had decryption methods and the government leaks out that they've actually got them and then they get closed. Like,
yeah. So,
and so,
just because you got something wrong once doesn't mean you're going to keep on. You can never try and do that thing again, right?
Exactly right. Human error.
You got to get back up on the bike and keep on going.
Also, though, who's governing the decryptions? Is the government governing these? Like, who gets?
Well, who governs whether or not someone can have a search warrant to your house?
Where does it stop? Okay, so maybe the government says, all right, then we need to decrypt this, and so people can't say we need to decrypt that as well, and then all of a sudden,
this is why we have
it's 1984.
Three arms of government. This is that sort of question is just basic. This is why we have the government structure that we have, right? It's not like at the moment there's illegal search warrants of your house.
I would hate to give Turnbull any sort of decryption power. And he's already got it.
Encryption doesn't work, as you said.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. I think this. What I'm trying to say really is that I think this argument is what I'm trying to say is that I can't speak. All I'm trying to say is I think this argument is probably a little bit more nuanced than we like to look at it in terms of, yes, there's no way that they can have a back door. That is probably a little bit of a simplified way of looking at the issue.
But also, isn't part of the issue, okay, so from our point of view, okay, let the Australian government, we trust the Australian government to do the right thing by all of us, so we let them have a back door. That same key has got to be available
but
to
not be letting them have a back door, right?
I think they're already doing things with our back door.
But
you've got to give
you've got to give China exactly the same privileges, or Turkey, or Syria, or
like at the moment, if we go back to the US, right? At the moment, Apple will assist law enforcement with iCloud records, with access to people's iCloud accounts. That's that. That's all that is, right? They may draw some lines with, specific device, we don't want to break our own encryption on a specific device. But that's not the same as lawful access to
photo locations.
Company held information. So this just is, Dropbox, any of these people, right? They're just companies. They're just corporations. They're not above the law because they are a big corporation. And if there's a legal search, then when you bring places like China and so forth into it, that's when you then have to go, okay, do I want my information stored on a server that is based in China? Or various
and the challenge
like
is they're doing that for the Chinese. If you're a Chinese resident, your information will be moved to China.
And if as a corporation you want to do business in a specific country, then it's only right and proper that you follow the rules of that and the laws of that country. Just because you think that their particular laws are a load of crap, because they probably are, and totally against a whole heap of principles that you might hold, doesn't mean that as a corporation then has the right to go, well, you know what, I want to make money out of your people, but I don't like your I don't like your legal system, so screw it.
And it was interesting the way they've done the Chinese one, because they force you to actually acknowledge that this is happening. They don't it's not just one that you can actually tick the box and say, right, you've told me, see you later. And if you're you can say, well, I actually work for I'm not Chinese. I'm over here working for Apple, for example. You can choose not to have your information there. Or if you're a Chinese resident and you tick a box to say, I prefer mine not to be there, you have to give a reason. So
that is interesting. Yeah, I wasn't aware of the.
It's not just tick a box. Yeah, you've told me it's going to China. Blah blah blah.
That's good.
So with this too, like with the who gets to use the decryption, and so if there's a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, never mind. I'm good.
It is,
it's the law. It's a law enforcement thing, and it would have to, you'd have to go through and get subpoenaed the information, etc.
And if we went to war, and like my whole problem is it has to be given. The decryption has to be given to a human. And if there's secrets that other governments want that aren't allies and things like that, what means will they go to get those secrets?
Well, what means do they already go to? All of these, every we would hope that hope that our own Secret Service and every other, the US and they were all trying to find this information, right?
Yeah.
If they
Yep.
weren't, you'd be pretty disappointed
they're
they're not really doing their
basically-
job.
I think that is
Settle. Settle.
All right. I'm going to shut up. Back to
right.
you, Michael.
Now, also, law enforcement warn of the impact of 5G, mesh networking, and IPv6, which is just adds more complexity to because we're running out of IP numbers for everybody. We have to have more numbers, which adds more complexity. But in submissions to the Joint Committee on Law Enforcement's inquiry into impact of new and emerging information and communications technology, the Department of Home Affairs and Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission warned that law enforcement would be degraded by a number of new technologies. The agency said the arrival of 5G, mesh networking, and IPv6 would make interception of communications through existing legislation harder. In particular, the use of 5G in concert with other access modes across the same session would hinder surveillance. In other words, you can have part of your data come down via 5G, part of it can come down via 4G, part of it could come down via cable.
They're saying
just giving
mesh
different bits of
networks-
information.
so. With 5G, it allows for peer-to-peer,
Yeah.
direct peer-to-peer communication for some of the data source. I just didn't. I don't know anything about the 5G spec, but the fact that they're calling it a mesh network, they're talking about mesh network with respect to 5G, makes me wonder if, you know, you got a cell tower over there and a phone halfway between you and the cell tower.
Yeah.
If it almost it is like allows for a mesh network between the devices.
Yeah. So it
Which
makes
is,
it just
if it's
that
true,
much
that's
harder.
pretty damn cool. From a technology perspective, and and you can see how there's no centralized location at the moment. You might be upstairs and I might be downstairs in the same house, talking to each other on the phone. It's going through the same cell tower, right? It's all transferred through there. Whereas I have to. It's made me curious to look into 5G specs.
There you go. I'll expect a report in a month's time.
Yeah, thank you. Phew.
Now, story 7. iTunes Store drops support for Windows Vista on May 25 and the original Apple TV. 2007, the days when Windows Vista was all the rage or inducing rage. The Apple TV was brand new and music download stores were the hottest way to get the latest albums. Apple certainly remembers that year and would like you to move on. The company has posted a support page warning that the iTunes Store will no longer work on Windows XP or Windows Vista and first-generation Apple TVs as of the May 25. iTunes itself will function, but new purchases and re-downloads are off limits. Security changes necessitate dropping these other platforms, Apple said. And again, my 2 bobs worth on this one, with the reporting by many of this story, is that they have used pictures of the first little black Apple TV and not the original TV, which just adds to confusing people something terrible. Because there's years difference. That Apple white Apple TV was out for years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's not too many people running Vista out there, though. Surely.
No.
Oh, yeah.
I was at a certain major retail shopping in Australia, a major retail company in Australia, just the other day, and they restarted their XP sales terminal.
No.
I couldn't believe it.
Actually, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more XP machines out there than Vista, though.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
And yes, I doubt whether they'd be using iTunes on this particular machine, group of machines. But anyway, now here's a story, and I'm sure this happens in Australia as well, even though we haven't actually been able to find any stories about it. But Apple's USA Elk Grove repair facility makes 20 accidental 911 calls a day. Repair technicians who work at Apple's facility in Elk Grove, California, make frequent accidental 911 calls when testing Apple devices. The Elk Grove police dispatcher, Jamie Hudson, told the local Sacramento news site. The influx of calls started back in October 2017, which coincides with the introduction of the emergency SOS feature that was added in iOS 11. Elk Grove police have received an average of 20 accidental calls per day from Apple. That's 1,600 since October, police dispatcher Hudson says. The calls take valuable seconds away from what could be life and death situations. And it's not just Elk Grove Police Department that's affected. The Sacramento County Sheriff's Department Communications Center has also received 47 accidental calls since the 1st of January. And sometimes dispatchers can hear technicians working in the background. There is a loud tone and a countdown that plays when emergency SOS is activated. With the auto call feature, but it may be that the repair technicians are not able to hear it. So, and I'm sure it's happening in other places, other repair centres. You know, if those buttons are stuck, you know, you got a wet phone, for example, that would allow that to happen. And it's just sitting there. You haven't even looked at it to work out what's wrong with the phone. You know, it's just.
It's strange that there's so many from this particular one, though. Like you said, it must be happening in other ones, but is this more than usual?
This may be
the
Apple Repair Center that is where full phone exchanges go to be rebuilt. You know what I mean? Like, when you get your phone, so maybe that's what that is.
It might be the home for the whole of California. You know, like maybe that's where all those phones go. Yeah, you're right. The rebuild.
Yeah, because they do have loaner phones. When you get stuff done by Apple, you can get a loaner phone sometimes, and then get the repair done, and then so maybe it's going to the centre like that for while you've got a loaner phone. So
yeah,
but,
right.
Yeah. Anything else, gentlemen? I don't have any how-tos this week.
No, well, one little bit of rumor that I've heard just recently with that I haven't heard. Geez, that makes it sound like I've got some source somewhere, which is a load of crap. That I've read in all the places that any of you could also have read them, but I thought was interesting nonetheless. Was and one that I didn't expect to see. Revamped MacBook Air.
Okay.
I would have been much more likely to believe that it was a dead MacBook Air than anything else. But recent rumors that we will see a revamped MacBook Air. So this lovely little MacBook Air that I have isn't going away totally just yet, apparently, according to the normal rumor sites, Mac Rumors and what's his name? The analyst who's always
Mark,
So
not Gurman. I haven't seen
what do you the credibility of this? What do you reckon?
I'm just hopeful, man. I'm just hopeful because it's still my favorite form factor. So, that's all.
Cool.
It hasn't had a proper update for a while. It's still had a bit of a spec update last year, I think, the 30 inch. But it was still an old chipset, just a slightly faster version of. So updated chipsets, updated, resolution on the monitor. And
the screen is the thing that's lagging behind, isn't it?
Yeah, which is I don't care. That's I don't want to have to pay for both in monetary value and power value and performance value a high res screen when I don't look at it anyway. So.
Very true.
It's a great little machine and great to see that they don't just throw it, throw it away. Yeah.
So we have our show promotion, which is our show notes linked each week on the show uploads. Spotify, don't forget to just search Aussie Mac Zone. Apple News site, Aussie Mac Zone. Now, also, a quick congratulations to Leo and Twit TV on their 600th Mac Break Weekly show, which I believe is like tomorrow night our time. So, well done, gentlemen.
Awesome. Well done, gentlemen.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you to our listeners, our sponsors, this week being athwebhosting.com.au and Aussie Tech Radio, and to our supporters. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, listeners. Thank you,
Thank you, Michael.
for all our
Thank you,
support.
Zach.
Remember, Apple a day keeps the androids away.
Keeps the Android away. Alrighty.
See you guys.
I'll go and have mine now.